We are live. What is up, everybody? Welcome to, guess this is episode 5 now of Just Chatting. I don't know if I'm gonna stick with that name. Uh, I just kind of rolling with it, but yeah, no, I appreciate everybody joining the stream. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for that. Either way, I appreciate it. Everybody um, who gives a crap about my opinion. Um, so yeah, what's been going? There's a lot of news to cover. I think this might be a little bit of a longer one. Um, Non-football related. I think we know there's a lot going on in the world right now, and it's pretty scary times for sure. So um, I won't blabber on about it, but I just hope everybody's staying safe out there, and if you're working from home like I am, not getting too stir crazy and um, just stay safe out there, peeps. So, but anyways, no, a lot of news. Free agency finally kicked off. We've had legal tampering the last couple days, and then today, the 18th, officially began. Sorta, kinda. We'll get into how the virus sorta is impacting this year's free agency, but no, yeah, just hope you guys are staying safe, and I appreciate you joining. So, before we get into the free agents, though, uh, I saw a couple of you guys were giving me grief about the Tedrick Thompson, the Tedrick Thompson tweet. Uh, Thanks for the follow, EMG. I appreciate it, dude. Um, I saw the tweet that from Ian Rappaport saying they're allowing Tedrick to seek out a trade. Um, it makes sense. First of all, let me just clear the air on this because it's been like a running joke. Everybody makes fun of me for being a Tedrick stan, and some people think it's a troll. So let me just clear the air. Clear the air. What up, Sonny? Yeah, dude. Tedrick stands all the way. Let me clear the air though on Tedrick. I think I've told you, Sonny, recently, a couple weeks ago, about it, but the thing for me about Tedrick is it's not a troll. I did really like Tedrick coming out, um, and it kind of became a running joke that everybody was hating him, and I was just going against the grain to be contrarian. But it has sort of developed into no, I really like this player because of the really more so the shoes that he was filling or the shoes he was being asked to fill. Um, I don't think anybody would have been able to fill the shoes of Earl Thomas. Um, he he's still arguably the best safety in the league. Uh, Maybe some other guys have some arguments to be made, but when he left, it was going to Tedrick. I think it played a big part in his mental game, right? I think I don't think he physically lacked the tools like a lot of people said. Yeah, he wasn't the fastest guy. Was he a true center fielder like Earl? Absolutely not. But, you know, I just stand him for the fact that, you know, it was like him against the world. Nobody really gave him a shot. Um, Anytime he did anything halfway right, nobody acknowledged it, or it was a joke. Every time he did something halfway wrong, it was immediately just pandemonium. So um, I do like Tedrick more so for just like I said, the fact that he really was walking into a situation that was for lack of a better term, um, an uphill battle for sure. So. Um, if he ends up getting traded, I wish the best for him. If he doesn't, I think he's fine at the price. He's a little expensive, but uh, at $2 million, every 500,000 counts, guys. When you're trying to improve your team. Um, as a backup free safety, I don't think it's a terrible contract to hold, but I think it's good on the Seahawks to allow him to get an opportunity to go and talk to some other teams. So jokes aside, I guess we can get into like sort of the breaking. There's been a lot of news today, over the last couple weeks. So as you see on the screen, I've kind of got the most updated snapshot of the roster. These are pretty much all the players that are under contract right now. Um, Unless something's broke in the last like couple minutes that I don't know about. Um, this is the most updated snapshot. So we knew about Greg Olsen a few weeks back, about a month back now. He was kind of the first one to trickle in. We were waiting on some of the restricted free agent guys. I've got highlighted in orange, David Moore, Malik Turner, who I expected at least one of those guys to be back. They got them both back. Hollister, big one. They put a second round tender on him. So he'll come in at about $3.2 million, which is fine for, the guy who was third in receptions on the team last year. I think the tight end room's going to be phenomenal this year. Joey Hunt, I didn't expect him to be back, but I think the team just liked him better than I did or anybody else did. We know he's a bit undersized, but I think football IQ-wise, he's very smart. And I think that's his strongest point. I think that's why they kept him around. Jordan Ruse, just a versatile guy that knows the system. He's going to be back. I don't know if he'll make it all the way through the 53 and on the practice squad again, but I think it was probably worth bringing him back for sure, at least for a 90-man roster. Definitely worth bringing him back. Brandon Jackson's kind of a weird one at $2 million. A lot of people didn't like to see him back. As a rotational guy, I don't really mind it. Could they have found somebody better? Sure, but I'm not really losing sleep over that, guys. I know some people are upset about it. I'm not really. So Brian Monet, Ryan Neal, just some other restricted guys that they brought back. But the big news has been the last couple days with free agency. Everybody's kind of been waiting with bated breath, and Seahawks didn't really make any news until late yesterday, and it's been rather underwhelming overall because everybody's been so focused on pass rush. But it appears so far they've taken care of mostly internal guys, and then all of the externals have been offensive linemen. Like even Bruce Irvin I consider him an internal guy. They've had hands on him. They know exactly what they're getting. They know how he fits in. Their expectation of him is a little bit more clear than maybe some of the other guys. So the three offensive linemen, B.J. Finney signed yesterday. It was a 2-year deal, but once you add in the guarantees, it's more like a 1-year deal. So he's kind of an interesting guy. Came from Pittsburgh. He's got a lot of experience playing at left guard, but most recently he started in replace of an injured Marquise Pouncey, or one of the Pouncey brothers, whoever is over there. And in my opinion, he played pretty dang good at center, guys. And it kind of like raised the question today about, what does this mean for Justin Britt? Is he going to be cut now? And then bringing Joey Hunt back, it's sort of like it sort of looks like they're setting up for potentially a releasing Justin Britt to save that cap, which is like $7.5 to $8 million in savings. Last week I was like, no way they're gonna let go of Britt. It wasn't just me going against the grain, guys. I really believed that replacing Britt was going to be harder to do than most people thought, and he still might be. I don't necessarily think that these like moves at center, this Finney move, bringing back Hunt, means Justin Britt's for sure gone. I think they could still approach him with a restructure. I think they could cut him now. If I was 80% Britt stays last week or a couple days ago, I'm probably now at like 65% he stays. So I'm a little less confident, but I'm still confident that he's, of the names on this list, he's still arguably one of your best 5. And I was talking to John Gilbert on for those of you guys watching and know him on Seahawks Twitter. I was talking to him earlier about it, and he made a good point about, well, Britt knows multiple positions too. Like, he's settled in at center, but in theory, if they wanted to move him to guard or right tackle, even where he originally was at as a rookie, they might be able to do that. And then at the price that he costs, as a tackle, it's a little bit more favorable, right? I don't think that's necessarily what they do. I don't think they're going to move Britt to a different position. We're just kind of vetting out all the potential outcomes. So I posted a few clips, a few games of BJ Finney. If you guys haven't checked that out, check it out on Twitter. And then Gilbert threw up appreciate the follow, Dark Soldier. If you're a member of Seahawks Twitter, shoot your handle in the chat, just so I know who you are, or give you a follow back, dude. But I appreciate the follow. So where was I? Lost my train of thought. So I threw up some clips of Finney, a few games. Again, I like him at center. I think with his short arms, the way he's built, and just my first impressions of like his game that I watched at guard versus the games at center. I thought he fit a little bit more. He was a little bit more comfortable. He did a little bit better at center. And not to like jump ahead too much, but with all three of these guys that they brought in on the offensive line, Shell, Finney, and even Ogbuehi, who I haven't watched as much. I watched one game of him. They seem to be better pass protectors than run blockers. And I found that interesting because, as we know, run blocking has been like the mold of like the Solari guys. Like, they haven't had very many, other than maybe Dwayne Brown, really strong pass protectors. And even when they've targeted guys like Fluker or J.R. Sweezy, Mike Upati, even when they've targeted free agents in the past since Solari's got here, and even back with Tom Cable, they've always targeted guys that were primarily first run block, guys that excel in run blocking, or adept at run blocking, and not so much pass protection. So I thought that was kind of interesting that the guys that they've gone after are better pass protectors in terms of like PFF grades, and then what the film indicates, it definitely validates those grades. Some of you may not give too much credence to PFF grading. I'm in between. I always like to look at the PFF grades first. As soon as I hear like, hey, Seahawks brought in this guy, I'll look at the grades first. Then I'll go watch the film to see if it validates if the film validates the grade. So I definitely think it validated the pass pro grades for these three guys, at least in the limited fashion that I watched. So again, pretty interesting. If that's an indication of anything going forward, maybe a philosophy change in, hey, we're paying this quarterback all this money. We've had this conversation before, guys. Like, we need to protect this guy. Everybody that we have is great run blocking or decent run blocking, but we just don't have anybody that's really good in pass protection. So again, interesting. I think this year's O-line battle in camp is going to be definitely interesting. Like, you look at the guys at guard, you've got Phil Haynes, you got Ethan Posick. Sadly, they didn't bring back Jordan Simmons. Hopefully he gets another shot somewhere else. But Jordan Ruse, guy familiar with the team, a couple practice squad guys in Fuller and Demetrius Knox. But it's going to be interesting because I think BJ Finney could be your center or center hedge in case you cut Britt. But if you keep him, I think he would slide in at left guard. I don't think Fluker's getting cut, guys. I know he's a name that some of the people are saying, well, he's a potential cap casualty. I just don't see it. Again, when you cut somebody, you're creating a void. That just means you've created more work for yourself. You've created more spots that you need to address. So it's not it's not always advantageous to cut somebody for cap without a plan. Now, I know you guys are saying, well, the plan is to use that money to get extra pass rushers. And if that's the plan, fine. Okay, I get it. But I don't really think now that we're looking at what's happened today, what's transpired, that there's a realistic scenario of you getting Clowney and another tier one guy like one of the franchise tagged guys, like Yannick or Matt Judon or Chris Jones, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think the team has, even if you cut Britt, KJ Wright, all the names, right? We've been through them. I don't think it's you're cutting so much out, as I've mentioned before, just to have this luxury when you can really manufacture sacks with tier 2, tier 3 veterans. Or hey, we've got the draft coming up, and I know some people are saying like, hey, it's not a deep class at edge. Yeah, it's not a deep class at edge, but there's still options, and they're going to prioritize that. I guarantee you, pass rusher is going to be one of their first 3 picks, if not their very first pick. Even if they get Clowney back, which I do think they will. We'll get to that, guys. Now that you have Bruce Irvin, and as much as you guys hate Rasheem Green and LJ Collier, they're going to play significant roles this year, guys. Sorry, you might not like it, but the team needs to find out whether these guys are legit or not. As I mentioned before, you can't give up on LJ Collier after 1 year. He was hurt pretty much the whole year. He was behind. His development is way behind. I expect a big jump from him this year, and him sliding inside occasionally at 3-tech, I think is awesome. I think it's going to be great for him. Rasheem Green is like 22 years old. I don't care if this is his 3rd year. He's growing as just a general person, a man. He's still learning how to be a pro, and I think as I mentioned before, we saw a lot of progress from him in the Q4 of last season. I'm not saying they have to be 3-down players for you guys or over 50% snaps, but they're going to count on these players to play some decent amount of snaps. 40+% of snaps. I have no doubt about that. But we'll get into the draft. We'll get into Clowney. So just kind of wanted to address some of what I thought about my initial takeaways on the O-line. So we'll see how that pans out. I'm sure they're going to draft another tackle, because here's the thing, guys. It's not just right tackle right now. You might be able to get a starter out of this, whether it's Shell, whether it's Jamarco Jones. John Gilbert actually gives more credence to the Chad Wheeler, who started for Mike Solari, I believe, a couple years ago with the Giants. He's actually got starting experience. This might be the most competitive camp at offensive line that they've had in a long time. So it's definitely going to be interesting. But what I was trying to say was you need to start thinking about the future left tackle, right? You don't want to be the Rams where you're sort of like held into one season of Andrew Whitworth, and now like they extended him another 3 years today. I don't know what they were thinking, because I think he had a massive decline this year. Maybe the PFF grades say otherwise, but everything I heard and saw was he took a big dip. So the fact that they're rewarding him with 3 more years, he's like 34, 35 years old, is beyond me. Seattle doesn't want to be in that position where you're overpaying Dwayne Brown. You don't know how much longer Dwayne Brown wants to play. He's getting up there in age. All I'm saying, guys, is now that George Fant isn't here for the long term, we don't really have a prospect in the wings that we're grooming, that we're developing for that spot. I don't think he's on the roster right now. Look, of these names, I don't think the future left tackle is on the roster. So I don't know if you address that this year and say the mid rounds. It's pretty hard to find a starting quality left tackle nowadays in day 2 or day 3, guys. A lot of the times over the last like 5, 6, 7 years, if you want a good left tackle, you got to take them early. And I just think like all the good ones, or most of them anyways, this year are going to be gone by the time 27 comes around. And again, I think Seattle's going to prioritize defense over offense early on. So I've seen like Nathan Ernst and some of the other guys at other blogs say, oh, well, if they get Clowney, Bruce, now we have Bruce, like now we can focus on drafting a tackle early. I will hold my horses on that. I could, maybe there's a better chance now, but I still think they go defensive line early. Anyways, I won't blabber on too much more about the O-line signings, but let me know what you guys think. If you've seen my clips on Twitter, let me know what you guys think of Shell particularly. I think he's probably he kind of reminds me a little bit of Jermaine Ifedi, but like I think he's going to cost way less, right? That seems to be the meme right now. He looks like he's got the same exact body type, and from the clips that I put up, he reminds me of kind of like Jermaine Ifedi. It's kind of funny. Derek, you said I think what they've done at least gives them flexibility with their first pick, assuming they keep Clowney. Yeah, definitely. I don't think they're forced to do anything, especially if they keep Clowney. I don't think they'll be forced to feel like they need to take a specific player at a position. I think that's the personnel, the front office employees, right? The personnel employees, particularly the scouts, the college personnel guys, that's their job, right? Or the pro personnel guys, I should say. You address free agency so that you can set up the draft so that you're not forced or you don't have all these voids. That's why I say let's hold our horses on cutting all these guys just to save cap, because you're creating more voids. Now you've got to address more things. If you can go into the draft with a singular focus, whether that's right now addressing pass rush or if you're in the camp that says we need to protect Russell Wilson, at least get through free agency with a point, like you said, Derek, have some flexibility or have a more clear focus on what the direction is in those first 2 days. That's really the meat of the draft, as we always talk about. Sonny, you said, does Shell look like a Solari guy? Definitely, I think he does. Just the big size is the first thing you want to look at. He's not a guard like some of the guards that Solari's brought in at big size, but the size is kind of important. It's a blanket statement, right? Oh, they like big guys. Like, of course, everybody likes big guys, but this team particularly likes big guys, and it just seems like ever since Solari came in, the wingspan, the weight, the frames of these offensive linemen have just gotten bigger. I think Shell's arm length is like 2 inches smaller than Ifedi's, but it's still freakishly long. I think it's like 34 inches or something like that. Sizes and everything, that's what she said. Technique is more important. I think from what we saw in the clips, I think this guy is capable. I think he has potential to start. I'm not kidding about that. He might not be, the Jack Conklin that everybody wanted, but I think this is a pretty good value, Sonny Shell. I think he definitely fits the Solari mold. I didn't really notice. I need to go back and watch like what blocking scheme. So Solari runs zone blocking scheme. I need to go back and look. It's kind of confusing with Le'Veon Bell just because with his running style, the blocking scheme kind of gets screwed up. I don't know, for whatever reason, because he waits forever. Like, you know what I'm talking about. He just sits in the backfield and waits to make up his mind, and then he picks where he goes. Like most zone blocking scheme offensive line coaches would hate that because they want a guy to make his decision on his cut or his read on like the third step. It's very quick. That's why one cut backs are better for like Solari's scheme. Guys like Carson, guys like we have in house. it doesn't surprise me that they're going after like an Alex Collins or an Isaiah Crowell type back for depth. It makes total sense. But yeah, Shell, he definitely looks like a Solari guy, and I think he has potential to compete for that starting right tackle position. I wouldn't say he's a clear-cut guy. We need to see what his contract is, though, because that's also a big indicator of what they think of a guy, right? So like when Finney's numbers came in and we saw it was a 2-year deal, they guaranteed him like $4 million, whatever his average salary was. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was like 4 to 6 million or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's significant enough to me to say that's a tier 2 contract. That's not just a guy. That's not a jag. He's not just a camp body. He's coming in here, and he's either going to be a starter or the backup, and likely a starter, right? This is the same type of contract that, same kind of guarantees that they gave to Upati or like a Sweezy. He's got a 2-year deal again, but most of the guarantees are front loaded. So to me, it's really like you're only committed to this guy truly for a year. But the fact that they've committed anything significant tells me they've got plans for Finney. We'll just have to wait and see what that indicates. I know I said I wouldn't ramble on about offensive line, but here we are. If you guys got any more questions about the O-line, I can come back to it for sure. So, but for now, I think I'm going to jump forward to the biggest acquisition, in my opinion, which was yesterday with Jaron Reed. Kind of a controversial extension depending on who you ask. Some people didn't want to see him back. Some people said it depends on the price. And I was kind of in that boat. I was depending on the price. Actually, I was kind of more like I'm willing to pay him probably a little bit more than what the common fan wanted. So some people were saying, yeah, I'll take him for under $10 million a year. I was fine with getting him back at a higher price than that. Probably like 12 or 13 million is something that I was thinking that he'd come back for, or that he'd get on the open market. When he came in at 11.5, I was actually pretty pleased. Yeah, the market was pretty cold for him. I think he had higher expectations, but I think it's good for him still. I don't think he's like a loser in this deal by any means, particularly with the amount of years that's on it. He's going to be able to get back to the free agent market at 29 years old, right before he turns 30. So he'll have another crack at it. If he doesn't have to be a double-digit sack guy again. He can be a 5-6 sack guy, but have a decent pass rushing win. Just be a guy that is a consistent, pass rusher in terms of pressure rate. I think that's more important than sacks guys, especially for interior D linemen. I think it's more important than sacks in general. I think it's just a better stat to track. Pass rush win rate. And I think what that does to Seattle, now that you have an interior presence in terms of pass rusher, is it allows them to not be... I said this in last week's episode. If you didn't get Jaron Reed back, defensive tackle, and particularly a guy that can pass rush, would be like, in my opinion, a top priority. Because I assume Clowney would be back. I assume they would be able to address edge in free agency. And then all of a sudden, guys like Ross Blacklock, which, forgive me, last week I was pronouncing his name Blaylock like every time. And it was spelled correctly, Blacklock, on my screen, and I mispronounced it like every time I said it. So forgive me there. But Ross Blacklock from TCU, I had him as like, They had a formal interview with this guy at the combine. He just seemed to fit like somebody that they would target at the back of the first round. And if we didn't get Reed back, he's that kind of player that I think they would prioritize. I'm not necessarily saying it had to be Blacklock. He's an example. Another example would be Matabuike from, I believe I want to say it's either Texas A&M or Mississippi State. I have it up here. Texas A&M, Neville Gallimore, Marlon Davidson, those types of guys. Those kind of fringe day two, kind of like Collier was last year. Fringe day two, probably a little bit overdrafted, but fits a need. Now that you have Reed, I don't think Ross Blacklock is as much, or a guy like that is much a priority at 27. Now I think Seattle can, like Derek, you said, they have flexibility now. They could trade back, which they probably want to do anyways, like they want to do every year, regardless. They could trade back. They could go edge. They could consider, is there somebody slipping? Is Yetur slipping? Or one of the offensive linemen slipping? It's such a great year for offensive tackle guys. We talk about getting prepared for. We talk about getting prepared for replacing Dwayne Brown. This year is probably the best year to do that, and it's just a shame that we're in a position that we need to address defensive line so badly that we can't, and that we're drafting at the back of the first round, that we're not really in a safe spot to be able to bank on a Andrew Thomas, a Tristan Wirfs, a Mekhi Becton, Niang, Jones. I've got first round grades on 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 guys, and then there's some day two guys that I think are probably quality potential starting guys. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is still the option to draft a starting caliber tackle. Derek, you said lots of options at OT. Austin Jackson, Ezra Cleveland, want to go Wilson, all possible. Yep. Yeah. No, I think I just eating my words as I'm just kind of backing up here. And I even have that mocked here. Like I have Niang past the Seattle's pick. I don't have Austin Jackson in the first round. Josh Jones from Houston. Where do I have him? All these like yellows I need to update because, free agency's going on. This mock's stupid anyway. I said this before. Mocks are stupid. It doesn't mean anything. But I just like to use it as a reference of like who I think is going to be available around Seattle's pick. So Josh Jones, I have him at Miami, but Miami's been signing, everybody under the sun. I don't know if they've addressed. I don't think they've addressed tackle yet, though. So their tackles are pretty weak from what I remember. Their whole team's weak, so they could use anything. They're probably in a best player available type situation with all three of their picks. So yeah. No, I agree. There's a lot of options. So I guess if they did decide they wanted to go offensive tackle, Jones, Niang, Jackson, like you said, Cleveland, maybe a scenario is they trade out of the first round and get a guy like Jackson or Cleveland in the second round. Pick your poison. I think I probably like Jackson a little better than Cleveland. I'm not as high on Wilson as some guys are. I think he's a little too heavy in my opinion. Peart's fine. I don't have Trey Adams, and I think he's a day 3 guy now. Some of the other, I'll get some more names up here as we get closer to the draft, but there's definitely options, man. And that's a blessing of getting some clarity with free agency. So, but again, I think it was critical. So the fact that Reed came back at 11.5 a year, it's good for both sides. There's no loser. I think both sides are winners. I think it absolutely filled a critical need for Seattle. And I think it just, like I said, narrows the focus on what they can do. We sort of talked about BJ Finney already. We talked about I'm just going over these notes here. I'm not going to go back to offensive line. Although I will say maybe we should talk about about the cap right now because I think Evan was saying that Seahawks had, what was it, as of this morning after the Finney deal and Reed deal yesterday, we had 12.2 million in true free space, and now we've signed Bruce Irvin, who I'm assuming that deal's going to be around 5 million a year. Shell, who I'm assuming is going to be a couple million a year, and then Ogbuehi, I think he hasn't played the last 2 years. That's probably a veteran, no guarantees opportunity deal. So nothing to worry about there. We still don't have the number on Luke Wilson yet, but I'm 99% sure that's a vet minimum deal. No guarantees. But after Bruce and Shell, you want to say take 7 or 8 million off of 12.2, which we started out the day in, or day with rather. You've got some moves to make. If you're gonna structure a Clowney, you're not going to be able to give him a large base salary. What you would likely have to do is give him a massive signing bonus, like give most of that first year money in a signing bonus. That way it doesn't go against the cap. And then give him a small like base salary, like something that fits underneath the cap. But regardless of that, they've got work to do, right? So they're probably going to have to make some cuts. And we've already talked about Britt and what that would save, but I think now I am like, if I was 70% on cutting KJ Wright, I might be 75-80 now, because I just think that originally Barton he was drafted to be the replacement for KJ Wright, as we mentioned last week. I think they're going to revert back to running more nickel versus base. So to get Barton on the field, you need to put him at will linebacker, not Sam. That's his natural fit. And currently KJ Wright's the will. So I think what all this leads to in terms of saving cap, getting young guys out on the field, turning the page to the next era of Seahawks football, I think all that suggests that KJ Wright is likely a cap casualty, guys. I mean, it's sad to say, but I'm increasing my I'm like at 75-80%. Like I said, I think he might be out the door. All the best to him. If he sticks around, cool. He had a good year last year. I don't think I don't think he had a bad 2019 season. I just think it's more about turning the page to the next era of Seahawks football, guys. I really think that's what it's about. I think this team's going to be super young. I think they're going to rely on young guys again, like they did in the early LOB era. That's how you got to find out when guys are on rookie contracts while they're cheap if they're going to be legit contributors for you. That's how you don't get in these situations where you constantly have to battle the cap. And Seattle does a pretty good job of that. They usually don't have a bunch of dead cap space that's hindering them. And then obviously the quarterback making $35 million a year makes quite a bit of difference. But those days are long gone. But needless to say, we probably gonna have to make a few moves if we want to not only get Clowney back, but if you want to add another pass rusher, I think the dream scenario is out the door. I don't think they're giving up significant draft picks to get a Yannick or a Judon plus pay him the contract. I think that makes things way too tight. I think you have to chop way too much, chop too many players. I still am holding hope that Britt can just get restructured and stick around versus cutting him. But I think KJ's gone. Ed Dixon, we know, is gone. It's just a matter of time. I don't know why he's still on the roster. They're not in a rush. They don't need to cut him, but I think if they want to continue to make deals, that probably needs to happen pretty soon. But we'll see. Maybe there's some reason that I'm just overlooking, right? I have no clue. I probably shouldn't even speculate it. But anyways, so other than that, let's see what else. Yeah, we're going to have to make some moves in the cat. We addressed. Okay, so let's expand a little bit more on Clowney because everybody's like, "What's going on with Clowney? Why is he not signed?" Uh, there's been a lot of talk today about just like what's the holdup, and I think what's advantageous for Seattle is the longer this goes on, the further his price comes down. Um, they they are likely going to get him back at a number that is way cheaper than we originally thought, and definitely way cheaper than his initial asking price, which was like something astronomical, like 22, 23 million dollars. That ain't happening. I definitely think he's coming in under 20 million. I think he's closer to 17 million a year, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's even less than that. But he didn't want to be franchise tagged. That was not a part of the agreement, right? So that's out of the question. He's not getting franchise tagged. But maybe what now happens because the market has dried up on him is he ends up having to take a short-term deal. Maybe this isn't a long-term deal like we initially thought this would be. Maybe he needs one more prove-it year. Or maybe he takes a 2-year deal similar to Reed. That way he gets some decent money, some decent guarantees, but is able to get back out to the open market before he hits 30. He's 27 right now, so a 2-year deal leads him to 29 years old. He can get back out to the market after proving himself as durable and more productive. Like, we know he was great in terms of pass rush win rate. We'd like to see the sacks go up just because that's, it's a luxury stat, guys, but it is a good stat. Getting home, hitting the quarterback is still important. Maybe it's not as important as mainstream media likes to make it out to be. Maybe it's not as important as the amount of money that it draws for these guys, or what have you. But they're still important, and I think he definitely, for as much as money as he's asking for, has to get that sack number up. He's got to get home. It's not just getting pressure per ESPN's metric or PFF's metric. Like, you gotta really cause havoc. Like, there's a clear difference in the Jadeveon Clowney that we saw in that San Francisco game before he got the core injury versus pretty much 12 of the rest of the games that he played. That was a completely different player, and I'm not saying he has to be that good every week to justify the money, but he's got to be about 75% of that every week. And I think there's been some talk today because of the cap moves that Tennessee made, that they've potentially freed up like $10 million. And because they were a playoff team, Clowney says he wants to go to a playoff team. They have a need at pass rusher. All of a sudden, a new team's in the fold, right? We thought, okay, yesterday the Colts got Armstead, or they got, not Armstead, they got Buckner, right? One of the San Francisco guys. They got Buckner, so they're out of the Clowney game. The Bills are out of the game. All these teams that we thought were going to be competing with Seattle for Jadeveon's rights are out, but then Tennessee happened today. Here's why I still think that's doubtful. There's a few factors, but maybe one that you've heard on radio today has to do with the physicals. So because of the coronavirus, the league has mandated that players cannot travel to visit other teams in free agency. So that means teams can't go and shake hands. They can't go work out. They can't get hands-on medical evaluations with team doctors. And Clowney's coming off a significant injury, guys. Maybe it wasn't like a bad sports hernia, but he clearly impacted his game towards the end of the year. He waited until the end of the year to have the surgery. And teams obviously want to check in on that surgery and his health to verify how, what's the status of this guy before we commit 3, 4, 5 years, potentially 70 to 89, whatever the number is, millions of dollars to this guy. we need to verify that this guy is healthy enough. And I just think it's too risky for a team to commit that much money without them getting eyes on you, and getting their team doctors to evaluate this guy. So again, another bonus, another advantage for the Seahawks. As another day goes by, we don't have Clowney news, even though a new team that is competitive. That again, he said he doesn't want to go to a loser. So and Tennessee isn't a bum town. Nashville's a cool city, guys. Maybe it's not his particular style, but it's a heck of a lot better than Indianapolis or Buffalo. Like, nobody wants to go to Buffalo, guys. I promise you that. That is you don't want to live there, especially in the winter months. So many players have already come out and said that. It's not a place that's enjoyable to work and live in every day. Not to mention he said he's liked it here. He's got Seattle's still a better team than a Buffalo. I think Seattle's still a better team than Tennessee, despite Tennessee making it to the AFC Championship game last year. Overall, I think he's already here. If he's got kids and they live here, his family lives here. He doesn't have to move. He doesn't have to spend money and get his family over to another state. Like, all these things factor in. There's no state income tax, right? There's all these advantages that make Seattle a more appealing place, even if their offer to Clowney is $1 million, $2 million less than some of the other offers that he's probably got. So while people are sort of like panicking about, like, I don't think we're going to be able to get him, we don't have money. One, yes, we can structure his contract, his extension in a way that allows him to be here, even with the cap situation that we're enduring right now, or the current snapshot of it. So the money thing's not really an issue to me. Now, after he signed, yeah, I think you're going to have to start definitely. You want to add more guys. Like I said, you're going to have to cut some people. But Clowney, I think you could still structure it in a way that gets him in here and gives him a lot of money upon signing and makes him a happy guy, even if it's only a short-term deal. Derek, you said I'd be kind of bummed with a short-term deal. Yeah, I saw Evan tweet that too. And I think it comes from a place of, like, I just don't want to be in this situation in a year. I don't want to be in a situation again where, okay, now Frank Clark, what are we going to do with him? No, we're not going to pay him. Okay, well, we've got Clowney, or now are we going to pay him? And in this theoretical 1 year short-term deal, in a year, in 2 years, let's just say if it's a 1 year deal again, now we've got to address the void again 3 years in a row. And really, you could argue it started before that, with ever since the Malik McDowell unfortunate news, guys. That thing that injury, that pick has had such a negative impact and a trickle down effect on this team, and from a team building perspective, it led to so many things. Like, once he got hurt, then they had to make the trade for Sheldon Richardson. They couldn't keep Sheldon Richardson around. He left after a rental. You couldn't keep Frank around. You potentially can't keep Clowney around. So it's just there's been this trickle down effect ever since the Malik McDowell thing, that I think that's where this I'd be bummed with a short deal narrative. I don't think it's unfair to have that opinion, Derek. You're obviously entitled to your own opinion, but I don't think it's necessarily as doomsday as we make it out to be. If they could sign him on a long-term deal for a good price, then obviously, heck yeah, that's the ideal situation. But my guess is Clowney really will prefer a shorter-term deal. That way he can get back to the market to make the Khalil Mack money, right? Because that's what he thinks he's worth. Even if that's an inflated sense of self-worth, all of us have that about ourselves. Even the most humble people have a higher, well, I wouldn't say everybody, right? Some people aren't like that. Most people, I would say in general, have a elevated sense of self-worth. I think a certain amount of that is healthy, but Clowney really believes that he is that generational talent, that number one overall pick that he was drafted to be. He believes he's that game changer, and I think he potentially has that tool set, that toolkit. And if he wants to get back to the market before he turns 30, and that means a 2-year deal, I wouldn't be so bummed about it. 1 year, I get it. You have to address it again. But if he proves himself, if he has a double-digit sack season, if he's in that 25, mid-20s pass rush win rate area again, that 25% or whatever it was, if he does something like that, dude, then wouldn't you want him to be rewarded for that? And wouldn't you then be more comfortable with paying him something like $20 million? By then it's probably gonna be like $23 million because every year the cap goes up significantly, and these market setting deals just keep making the franchise tag values and the top of the market just inflates every year. Like, like it wasn't that long ago, guys, that the Vikings gave Danielle Hunter an extension, and he's one of the most elite defensive ends in the league. You want to know how much that guy's making a year? $14 million. That is one of the best values at defensive end that money can buy. They're getting a stone cold steal for that guy. I would not be surprised if after this year he holds out, because that might have been a good deal when he signed it, or a decent deal when he signed it, but it's only been a couple years, and now that rate is like, it's way old. And some people say, well, no, you signed it, you own that, you lay in that bed, you don't hold out, you made that agreement, and I understand that point of view. I also get the player side, where you're one injury away from having this thing taken away from you completely. Make as much money as possible. So I used to be super hard on players that hold out. Now I'm a little bit more empathetic the older I get. The injuries that I see some guys go through. When you think about guys like Cam Chancellor or Cliff Averill that had to leave the game when they still had multiple years left in the tank, it hurts me. It pains me, especially with Cam, because he was like one of my favorite players. For the game to be taken away, and he got a good deal, so he's probably not a good example of that. But there are some guys that they sign these contracts, the market explodes, and they're still like at the top of their game, and all of a sudden that number is just super outdated. So I wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Danielle Hunter holds out in a year. Anyways, I didn't mean to ramble on about that, but yeah, the coronavirus is impacting all sorts of types of businesses, and this is one that it's including the NFL guys, and it appears that it's going to be advantageous to the Seahawks. Sorry if my dog starts barking. It looks like it's going to be advantageous for Seattle, and I'm confident that in the next couple of days, if not hopefully by tomorrow, we hear some breaking news about Clowney returning, short term or long term, for sure. I just wanted to tip my cap really quick to George Fant and Quentin Jefferson. It might not be the most popular talking point, but those two guys in particular, George Fant, I really hope he's able to get a shot over at the Jets at left tackle. That guy, from what I heard, was one of the hardest working players at the VMAC guys. For those of you who don't know, before the Dwayne Brown trade, that guy was slated to be the starting left tackle after Okun left, and we had sort of been through the ringer of the Bradley Sowells of the world. George Fant was the most promising thing that we had, and then he tore up his knee in that preseason game with the Minnesota Vikings, and ever since then it's been recovery mode, switch position mode. The team's kind of jerked him around, and he's had a great attitude about that. He's never complained about that. From what I hear, he's like a first guy in the building. He never missed therapy. He was always working out, always making sure his body was in shape. These last couple years where they had him as like a joker tight end or 6 offensive line, it's to me it's surprising that he got $10 million, because he didn't really have a traditional position this year. So the fact that the Jets feel confident enough to pay him $10 a year to compete at a starting left tackle is a little bit surprising to me. Just based off where he was used the last couple years. So I'm happy for him. Go get your bread, man. Hopefully this is just the beginning, and he's able to play another handful of years and make some bigger money for the Jets. I just super happy about him. And then Jeff, I'm happy with that he went and got the deal that he did. Super good rotational pass rusher, can play the 3 tech, can play the 5 tech. It's probably not a price that I wanted to pay to keep him around, but nonetheless, dude worked his butt off as a 5th rounder, I believe he was. The last 2 years, he had a bunch of quarterback hits, definitely affected helped us in the pass rush game, and I think he'll do good with Buffalo. Just wanted to say my quick 2 cents on those guys, and really happy for them. Because again, guys, like I said, this game, the average career length is like 3 years, if that. So the fact that those guys have been kind of jerked around, odds against them, injuries, never been able to get into a starting role or a firm starting role, the fact that they've got an opportunity now to make a little bit more money, secure their future for their family, and then potentially make bigger money in the future, I'm just really stoked for them. So just want to say my 2 cents on that. A couple things that probably still we've addressed the offensive line and defensive line, but the 2 things that we haven't addressed are wide receiver and the nickel cornerback. So I think these things are probably not going to be addressed in free agency, guys. I think the rest of the money, even after cuts happen, are going to be maybe another defensive lineman. Maybe they go after a veteran nickel, but I'm assuming that if Amadi isn't the starting nickel, they definitely need to add some competition, no doubt. But I just wonder, is that a veteran or a rookie? I'm sort of leaning towards the draft on this, guys. I'm not saying that they're going to take a nickel corner early. That doesn't really jive with what they've done historically with corners. But the wide receiver is an interesting one because I've slowly started to get what you analytics guys and people who have been wanting more offense, more firepower, particularly a third wide receiver, a legit third wide receiver. I'm starting to understand what you guys are saying, and I'm coming around on it. I definitely think one of the first 3 picks, and definitely before day 2 ends, I definitely think one of those needs to be a wide receiver. I think this wide receiver, we've already said the wide receiver class is good, but I think it's just too good to pass up. If you're not going to address it by day 2, I think you're still missing out on the meat of it. There's too many good guys. Mims, Ayuk, Higgins. I mean, some of these guys are arguably first rounders. They might go in the first round. My grades could just be completely off, but there's just so many guys. Pittman. There's names I don't even have here. Like, I'm missing names that are going to go in day 2. I think Seattle needs to get in on that. I like John Ursua. He's a little bit older, but I like John Ursua. I like Malik Turner as like sort of the replacement for John Brown. I'm sort of like less high on David Moore now. Like, I used to be high on him, but now I'm kind of like, that might be the one tender that I'm kind of like iffy about. I'm more iffy about bringing him back than I am even Brandon Jackson. Um, I don't know. I think you could have moved on from him. I think you could definitely replace his talent in the day 2 of this draft. He's still, there's no guarantee he's going to make this team still, but um, I think you need to add to it. And now we can see with the cap situation that there's just not going to be enough money to go make a trade for a tagged guy like AJ Green, or spend big on a Robbie Anderson type from the Jets, free agent. Some of the bigger names, Emmanuel Sanders is whoever you like. I just don't think they're going to be able to make a big financial commitment to that third wide receiver spot. We'll kind of see with the new CBA regulations on PEDs and marijuana. I can't remember what happened with Josh Gordon, but I've heard some people say, like, does that impact his eligibility status? I think it does, but I don't know the specifics on that. That will probably be an in-season acquisition, if anything. Going into the season, I think you still have to probably draft, like I said, before day 2 ends. And guys, I really like Brandon Ayuk from ASU. I need to watch some more guys, but so far he's left the best impression on me. I know that doesn't ring true with some of the other draft nicks. I know Nathan Ernst over at Hawk Blogger doesn't like him as much as I do, but I just think Seattle didn't get a chance to replace Lockett as the punt returner last year. I think they need to continue to look for that, and I don't think it's David Moore. I think Ayuk is a way more explosive returner than David Moore is, and I think they need to really take Lockett off those duties, just as like an injury precaution. He's good at it, but he hasn't been. It's not like he's been like his rookie year or sophomore year. He's not been as explosive in the punt return game. So it's not like it's not like there's an argument to be made like, oh, it's worth the injury risk to keep him out there because he's so elite, like Antonio Brown, what the Steelers were doing with him before he went off the rails. He's their number one guy. He's paid a bunch, but they kept him on punt return duty because he was so explosive. It's not like that. And I lay a bit of a blame, if not a majority of blame, on the special teams unit, the blocking. That could definitely be better, and some people have called out special teams coach Brian Schneider for that. Creating lanes for Lockett is more important than Lockett's ability itself. I think there's some truth to that, but nevertheless, get that guy off punt return duty and don't put David Moore right back out there. I think a guy like Brandon Ayuk is somebody who really fits the mold for me. He's about 6 foot, 200 pounds, so he's a bit bigger than Lockett. Good returner. He could work on his route tree a little bit. I mentioned this before, but I think he's more of like a poor man's Jalen Rager, which everybody liked early on. Even if you've gone a little bit cold on Rager since the combine, I think he sort of fits that mold. He's a little bit taller, but tested pretty well. Tape's pretty good in my opinion. And again, the biggest thing to me is he could be an immediate contributor in the return game and potentially be your third wide receiver. That's a hit in my opinion for a day 2 wide receiver. That's an absolute hit. Really liked his interviews. I think the kid's got a good head on his shoulders. With wide receivers and they can be divas. I don't get that impression from him at all. Like with some of the top guys, like even Chenault, something about his interview rubs me the wrong way. Some of these guys can be fake humble when they're interviewing at the combine or in pro days, right? Because it's really a job interview. So they can, some of these guys can put on a front. And if you don't have a good judge of character, that can go over your head. So I like to pay attention to interviews for sure. And I just get this great impression from Ayuk. I don't mean to keep blabbering on. they're probably not going to draft him. You know, it's similar to me last year with the other ASU receiver. I really like N'Keal Harry. Um, I was super dead set on him. I thought he fit the bill. He just seemed like a Seahawk to me, guys. And I had a draft crush on him all the way up. And when I saw we passed him by, and New England got him, it really frustrated me. Obviously, in hindsight, I'm super stoked to have DK Metcalf. Don't get me wrong, but I just thought it was kind of ironic that 2 years in a row starting to build this crush on a Arizona State wide receiver. And I'm not biased. Like those of you who know I'm from Arizona, it's not a bias. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. Uh, that like the school I followed was U of A, not ASU. They would be like the enemy. It'd be like if you're a UW fan, it'd be like Wazoo or Oregon, right? So I don't have any like horse in a race. There's no college bias. Like my perspective is not because I'm an Arizona boy at all. So don't think that in the slightest. I just really like Ayuk objectively. So, anyways, another guy, Michael Pittman. Really like him. He's definitely bigger. I think he also is a returner. I don't think he's as explosive as Ayuk in the return game, but he's the other option. And I think it's important that the third wide receiver be a little bit bigger. I don't want him to be sub 6 foot. When I say third wide receiver, I don't necessarily mean he's got to be a slot guy. I think if you got two big bodies, you could still play Lockett on the outside, but you could use Lockett in the slot a lot more. And I think that's an advantage on nickel corners, or when he's matched up like a shifty, smaller, agile guy is going to be an athletic mismatch for outside linebackers and nickel corners. So I just think schematically and matchup wise, it would be cool if we got another big body like getting Josh Gordon back or Michael Pittman Jr. As a third wide receiver option. So those are a couple of guys I'm kind of focusing on. As we get closer to the draft, guys, I'm definitely going to have more names. We'll do more draft-focused talk. I really just wanted to cover the free agency news tonight. I'm super happy to have Bruce back. That was awesome to see. He's going to be, even if he's not a 10-sack guy, if he's a 6, 7, 8-sack guy like he was last year, just a rotational pass rusher, he's going to bring you energy. He's got swagger. He's got that alpha mentality. He's going to be a leader to the young guys. This is a guy that plays with his heart on his sleeve and grew as a leader before he went to the Raiders and on to the other teams, guys. Like, he had learned from Chris Clemens. He had learned from Red Bryant. He had learned from Michael Bennett. He was around a lot of really good pass rushers. And his leadership, just being around those guys, developed. He was able to develop into a good leader. And I think that helps coming back to what is going to be a very young defensive line, guys. Once we consider a rookie draft, an edge, or what I'm assuming is a rookie defensive end, maybe another interior defensive lineman, a Poona Ford, L.J. Collier, Rasheem Green, very young men, impressionable men. I think there is a lot of value in having a guy like Bruce Irvin in the locker room for those guys to sort of pass it forward to the next generation. And it's not that like Clowney or Jaron Reed couldn't do that, but I'm saying it's going to be such a young team in general that the more leadership that we can get, the better. I don't think they're, other than like the main guys like Bobby Wagner and Russell Wilson, that there's any like true standout leaders or captains. Like maybe Jaron Reed's that, maybe he's not. Like I heard talk about Jaron Reed being this great leader, but maybe he's more of a lead by example guy because he's not a vocal guy. Like Bruce is going to be a vocal leader for sure, similar to the way Chris Clemens was, if you guys remember him. So I'm super excited to have Bruce back. I know you guys are too. I know you guys are just excited that they got a pass rusher, as am I, because it's kind of, I tweeted this out, it's kind of like FOMO, fear of missing out, as the Seahawks just watch all these guys get signed. and we're kind of standing pat, uh, panic starts to set in. Like, hey, we're gonna miss out on potential, game-changing pass rushers. So, yeah, I'd say an Irvin's game changer, but I think there's some definite value in that. So yeah, that's pretty much it for tonight, guys. I know Real Hawk Talk was doing their live segment at the same time, 7 p.m. So for those who decided to join in on my stream, I appreciate it a bunch. Not to be like competitive with other blogs or anything, but I didn't know they were streaming at the same time until like I saw Evan's tweet about an hour ago. So that was not intentional. But anybody who decided to show up, Sonny, Derek, dude, I appreciate it as always, guys. A reminder: I'm going to be doing an Amazon gift card giveaway, $150 at the end of this month. Maybe in the next episode or next couple episodes, I'll do like a little announcement. So I'll get like the gift card, and whoever the winner is, I'll send that over. Just kind of trying to build the channel. So again, all I ask is, I think you two are following the channel, but for anybody that's not following and watching, all I ask is you follow the channel, and if you follow me on Twitter, just retweet my pinned tweet, so it'll be at the top of my timeline, just to kind of spread the word. Just trying to do a little bit of a giveaway for growth here. And then if you guys are watching on the YouTube channel, I appreciate it. I know not everybody can join the live stream, so regardless of the platform that you're watching this in, I appreciate all the views and all the support, guys. It's gonna be we've got another couple crazy weeks, and then this is gonna just lead up into the draft. And so thankfully coronavirus hasn't impacted the timing of the draft. For now, let's knock on this particle wood here. Hopefully that doesn't get pushed out, and that the football season doesn't get pushed out. But in all seriousness, guys, I don't think this is a meme anymore. Like, this is we're losing a lot of people. People are dying. This is spreading all around. Even if you're a young, healthy person, yeah, you're likely, if you catch this, you're likely not going to die. But the important thing is respecting that you might spread it to somebody who will be significantly impacted, and before you even show symptoms. So it's important to kind of follow the direction. We're not in a self-isolation mode yet, like California or like Italy, like some of the other places, but I think it could potentially get to that point. So please, guys, stay safe. Make sure you guys are prepared. Have emergency stocks of essentials, food, and just home needs. Everybody, please stay safe. I appreciate you guys joining. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Sonny. Thank you, everybody else. And we'll talk to you soon, man. Hopefully, yeah. See you. Thanks for doing this again. Have a good one. Yeah, stay safe, man, and hopefully we get that Clowney news soon. So, yeah, thanks again, guys. We'll chat at you soon. Talk to you later.